Hello and welcome to the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap, live from what I've been told looks like a jail cell, but it is actually the new AutoTalk or Auto Media Group studio. But we are a little bit messed up at the moment. We haven't got all the cables, all the tech in place. So what you've got is me on my mobile phone pointed at me with my screen down there, and part of the background. I think we'll tidy this up as we go and get the better audio better, and so on and so forth. You're talking to me through not my proper microphone. I forgot some cables. But joining me today for the Weekly Wrap, episode 24, so we're almost halfway through doing a year of these, are my usual co-hosts, Matthew Hansen and Graham McDonald, who just a moment ago forgot what a live mic is. But anyway, we will carry on.
No one heard that, right?
Isn't that just the whole show? The whole show is this, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Unfiltered.
Pretty much, yeah. Now, so what we have is some great news today. We'll start off just by the usual plug. Don't forget to buy your AutoTalk live speakers tickets. We've got a whole pile more detail coming out in AutoTalk magazine on Monday or maybe Tuesday, depending on how things go. We've been very busy. We had to get out EVs and Beyond for World EV Day today. So EVs and Beyond is out in the market if you haven't read that already. Yeah, that's a great magazine with some really cool stuff in it. And we have AutoTalk going out next week. And then, of course, we do so many magazines. We're very busy, aren't we, Matthew?
Yes, you're very busy.
Yeah. So, yeah, now, if you're watching, don't forget to comment in the comments on wherever you're watching, and if we can see it, we'll answer back where possible. So, don't forget, for those tickets, go to autotalk.co.nz live. It's starting to sell up. We've got a lot of people coming. A lot of people are bringing big groups. That's going to be really interesting. I've never thought we'd be selling tickets in blocks of 10, but apparently we are, and that's proving pretty cool. So, let's get to the news. And we're starting off, well, let's just acknowledge the passing of Queen Elizabeth. She was quite the petrol head, for those who don't know. I believe she spent some time during World War II fixing and driving Land Rovers, or vehicles at least, not sure if they were Land Rovers back then, but and then since then she had a long association with Land Rover, and was known to spend a lot of time driving and forward driving on her Balmoral property, and also had a few interesting cars for the road as well. I mean, they were long associated with Land Rovers and Range Rovers, but also they had some very special Bentleys and a whole pile of interesting cars. Farewell Queen Elizabeth, and I guess welcome King Charles, who himself has an interesting run with cars. He has quite the collection, I gather, and has quite the collection of electric vehicles, including, I believe, an electric converted Jaguar E-Type that his sons drove in one of their weddings, I think. Or was it? I don't know. I get confused. We start the day by acknowledging that.
We've actually we put the whole front lawn with black cars this morning as a mark of respect. Rather than putting a great little colourful pennant, the entire lawn is dressed with black vehicles.
Was it accident, or is that very much deliberate?
No, very much deliberate. Yep. I'm a bit of a monarchist myself, as is Glenn, and we've got a line of black cars as a mark of respect.
What about you, Matthew? Are you marking the passing of Queen Elizabeth?
Well, I haven't got a squadron of black cars handy for me. I do think it's pretty amazing. You know, just the other day she was doing photo ops for the new Prime Minister in the UK. You know, the idea that she's working all the way through until 96 doing stuff like that's pretty incredible. Big day.
Mm-hmm. Right, now let's move on to local news, and that is NZAI. We're always starting with NZAI at the moment, but they just give us so much easy copy. Has appointed David Sina as temporary Chief Operating Officer. New Zealand Automotive Investments Interim Chief Executive Gordon Shaw has confirmed at the annual shareholders meeting that majority shareholder David Sina has been appointed to the temporary role as the company's Chief Operating Officer for a term of 6 months. David will be instrumental in reviewing supply arrangements that are currently outsourced in order to drive performance, reduce rework, and consequent after-sale quality claims, says Shaw. His specific skills and experience are invaluable as we look to ramp up the hub's processing capacity and quality assurance measures. Now, this is an interesting move because I kind of thought that was already David's job. It's an interesting move there, but I guess if that's what they need to fix, that's what they need to fix. We have a fairly detailed article. We have a fairly.
I thought, what was he already doing?
Yeah, I mean look. My understanding was David was responsible for the supply chain, and Eugene was responsible for selling them. So why suddenly putting him in charge of that process is going to make a difference, I don't know. Now, Matthew, we've got a fairly extensive story in the magazine. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Matthew's gone mute.
We've lost him. He's there.
He's
somewhere.
lost his microphone. No?
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Like
so tell us about the story we've got in the magazine.
My mic just jumped off a cliff. So yeah, Robert Barry was representing us at the AGM. Hello to Robert. And he put together a really sort of detailed piece on what went down and what was said. Sort of, I guess, forward to what we've been talking about, Senate in this new position. He's reiterated that he's not after the CEO position, and that's sort of something that will come down the line. They'll be trying to find a CEO in due course. And he also added a few other notes. He defended, everything regarding the shareholders that we've gone over multiple times before. I'll just read one of his quick quotes. It was clear to me that a different approach was required. Business performance and shareholder value must be at the heart of all decisions because investments must have suitable returns. Every single shareholder has been hurt by the loss of value. I don't wish to comment on the previous board disruptions. All I can say is that I have confidence in the new board and we will work well together. And Michael Stiassny, to sort of no surprise of anyone here, one of his sort of key line quotes that Robert outlined is, we are intent on stabilizing the company as quickly as possible, which is exactly what we sort of thought his role in all of this would be. But yes, a great full story from Robert, and one of the big pieces that we've got in the next ATNZ.
I think it's interesting to see whether they can. I mean, look, both Michael Stiassny and Gordon Shaw are very strong hands, and will no doubt get the company in play, properly in play from a corporate perspective. But I just don't get how putting David Senior into this chief operating officer's role is going to change things dramatically, as we said. Graham, you got any thoughts about that? I mean, what have you heard out there in regards to what's going on?
No, well, actually, not a lot to do with the truth. There's not too much chatter at this stage. I think that's 2 or 3 weeks ago, yeah, sure. But now that the AGM's been held, I think it's a really tough one for them going forward because they're trying to stabilise the company at a time when the flow of stock from Japan is at an all-time low, not quite an all-time, but certainly it's really tough to buy. And so they face the issue of restrained or restricted stock access, record high prices in a market right now in New Zealand that is, let's be honest, it's a pretty flat market. And the finance aspect, which has always been a big driver of profit for NZAI and previously Too Cheap, that's also been pretty muted too. I mean, the changes that they're talking about to the triple CFA, well, that's not until 2023. So in terms of stabilisation, you ask yourself, okay, what could you do at this stage to improve upon the model you already have? And that's the real tough one because the external circumstances that I argue have probably led to the position that they're in haven't gone away. So it's a tough one.
Yeah. I think it's interesting looking further forward for NZAI, and I kind of feel like they've lost an opportunity to with an infighting or a lack of motivation. There was only really 2 reasons potentially for the company listing in the first place. One was so shareholders could exit in an easy way. It was a fairly large company to sell privately. And secondly is to raise capital for expansion. And, when they launched, they originally had all this discussion about, maybe they'd look at new car franchises, they could do all this, they could do all that. And none of that's happened. There's no reason to take a single brand private, used car dealership listed unless you're going to start doing things like that. So maybe they can stabilize Too Cheap and get things moving there and then perhaps start acquisitions, but I'm not sure what the plan is. And it's interesting. It was, people, Too Cheap Cars was a controversial thing in the market, but it did some amazing things. Can it get back there? Who knows? I guess the tricky thing is, a lot of their growth was based on being very fleet of foot and very adaptable and a little bit cheeky. I'm not sure they can do that as a listed company. I definitely think they'll struggle to do that with directors in control who actually do care about what their outcome is and what they look like in the long run.
Well, there's the point, Richard, I think, is that they were much better at what they did when they were a privately owned company. I think once they listed, if you want to call it, the financial rot set in, and maybe again it's just bad timing, but you're right. They're a much better company being able to be operated, if you like, behind the scenes by two very strong people than having to answer to a board. And I think that's possibly part of the failing of Too Cheap going forward. Then it's not a corporate-oriented business.
You can't be cheeky and break the rules when you're in that position.
No, you can't. Exactly.
Which is what they did. They grew fast, broke things. It's a very common myth, thing in that kind of almost tech or upstart space. But yeah, as soon as they went public, that's going to become an issue. Now, we did, I think, touch briefly on the statistics this time last week, but we'll just touch on them again. It's strongest August on record, and it bucked trends according to the MIA for the new vehicles. Motor Industry Association Chief Executive David Crawford has confirmed that August's healthy new car registration figures, while refreshing news for the industry, were more indicative of shipping timing than changes in the market. Crawford describes it as the strongest month of August on record, adding that the surge in figures was largely due to shipments arriving, allowing back orders to be filled. The month tally bucks a recent softening market trend brought on by rising costs of living, high fuel prices, continued vehicle supply constraints, and a weakening New Zealand economy. I guess the question around that is, what are we seeing at the moment? Is it a down market? Is it supply? I think for the new car guys, it more seems to be supply than a market that's down. Graham, on the used car side, do you think it's more a market that's down than supply?
No, I think it's both. Supply is definitely an issue at the moment, and it's I wrote about it for the magazine for this month. There are some serious questions being asked right now amongst the import ranks about what to do about supply, because it just isn't there. And there's some difficult questions that have to be asked going forward. But, if you talk about it being at an optimum time, sales have been pretty flat too. So it's not like the market is absolutely clamoring for every single last imported thing you can chuck on a boat. It's very selective. The unfortunate part about it is we can't access the cars the market is selective about. So I'm loath to say that it's either or. It's just a bit of a depressing time for both. There's sales out there, don't get me wrong. Good dealerships are making sales. They're carrying on. They're doing business. But I don't think anyone's lined up the champagne, chocolate, and helicopters yet either. It's pretty tough. And you're definitely seeing a downturn in everything from email inquiry to walk-ins to finance inquiries to everything. Just that all those numbers are down. It's up to you what you do with them. That's not to say you can't sell cars out of that. You just have to lift your batting average, so to speak. But there's definitely been a decline in consumer sentiment to rush out and buy a car. Because don't forget, we've been through the fuel price shock. And so now I think, we've been through that wave of people that wanted to change their car almost immediately because they were concerned about the price of fuel. They've done that. We've been through the people that took the initial clean car rebate and they were keen to take advantage of that. Well, now that's been done too. It's just a natural part of buying a car. It does or it doesn't. So all those waves are gone. And now you're back to what I call a realistic everyday marketplace. And it's not great.
Totally separate side of the statistics argument, Matthew. How's that battle going between Toyota and Mitsubishi?
It's interesting. We covered Mitsubishi sort of putting their hands together and celebrating earlier in the year, but it's firming up. Yes. But it's firming up that it's really, they're fighting more for the passenger segment than overall. Overall, it's pretty close still. Toyota leads 18,000 to Mitsubishi's 16,000. There's about sort of 1,800 cars between them, which is pretty close at this point of the year. That's up till August. In passenger stakes, it's even closer. It's only really, 1,000 cars between them. Obviously, that's sort of being led by Outlander, being led by Eclipse Cross, and Mitsubishi's in front. So in the passenger car stakes anyway, which I think is what they're after, they're doing a better job.
Well, Dan Cook, if you're watching, get selling. It's getting close. It was a bit of a bigger gap at the start of the year, but you don't want to lose that now if you're going for it. And And Near Edge, I guess we're hoping for a few more ships, because I know you've sold a heck of a lot of cars. It's just getting them into customers' hands. We could end up in this interesting situation at the end of the year where we get, Twitter still potentially claiming, even if they do lose passenger, New Zealand's most popular passenger brand, based on the fact that perhaps they've got a heck of a lot of orders in the books that they can't deliver. So we could end up with an interesting marketing discussion when it gets to the closing stages of the year.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's orders versus sales, and we've had this discussion before. I think Mitsubishi have been really lucky to have stock on the ground, so if you want the thing, they can supply the thing. Toyota, it's all about orders right now. I mean, arguably, I can't think of a single Toyota model that you could walk into the dealership today and say, "I'll have that one, please," and they can just say, "Yeah, sure." Do you like it Thursday or Friday? So it's an order-based system instead. And I'd be curious to know what the number of confirmed orders are, and I know it's a closely guarded secret, but what the confirmed number of orders are that Toyota have versus sales, and whether the backlog's as big as we suspect it is, and therefore if only they could actually screw them together in Japan or Thailand fast enough, and if only they could get them on the boats, well, you might see a different story. And so as a Mitsubishi's crown, as it were, is as a result of circumstance rather than product. I'm not taking it away from Mitsubishi when I say that, but
yeah. Mitsubishi's also been lucky with a couple of very, very popular new models this year. Toyota may end up having the same tool to lever to pull, basically. They've got Corolla Cross coming soon. That is going to be a very, very, very popular car, I think, in New Zealand. I think that's going to become one of their most popular vehicles.
Yeah.
And if they manage to build up enough stock, or manage to secure enough stock for the launch for that, and bearing in mind that, I think New Zealand and Australia are launching fairly late in the piece for that vehicle, then that could come and kind of sweep the decks, I guess. Now, just to those people watching, I know we've got a few people watching. Don't forget to say hello in the comments. We will respond back if we can. Always great to see people watching this live. Now, on to our next one. We're kind of sticking with Twitter here as well. Twitter New Zealand inks a green hydrogen partnership deal. Twitter New Zealand has announced a partnership with Obayashi Corporation and its subsidiary Halcyon Power Limited. The partnership will see Halcyon Power supply Twitter with domestically produced green hydrogen for the company's recently announced Twitter Hydrogen Project Car Share scheme. There's a bit of discussion around hydrogen at the moment. The government's committed $2 million to hydrogen research. But the question is, does hydrogen have a role in the light car fleet? And I say no. But it certainly does in the heavy transport space. And I think the area which Twitter New Zealand has admitted they're into is more in the energy as a unit kind of thing. So Twitter New Zealand secured the ability to sell hydrogen fuel cells to things here. So, for example, you could use hydrogen on big work sites to supply electricity, or in more remote areas, or so on and so forth. So, have you been tempted to pick up any Mirais at auction in Japan when you see them come through, Graham?
I haven't seen any Mirais come through. I think, take a step back, Richard, because you've just displayed that you practically had to sleep with an EV pillow, blankie, and hot water bottle. The whole VHS, it's like VHS versus beta debate right now, hydrogen versus EV. EV appears to have electric vehicles appear to have come to the market first. If we acknowledge and accept that fossil fuel-based vehicles are not going to be with us for an extended period of time, let's accept that. We all accept that, right? We don't know what that timeline is going to be, but there's a timeline, there's a clock ticking. So what's the alternative going to be? And I've maintained for a while that I think we are remiss in putting all our eggs into the EV basket, that hydrogen or fuel cell vehicles, for example, might be another way forward. And we appear to be dismissing them as fast as we can as a fleet alternative, not just for New Zealand, but globally. I don't know. I don't know enough about where that's going to sit in the future, but I think it's a bit like the VHS beta. Lots of rhetoric out there, but not necessarily enough basis to go forward yet.
Oh, look, I would love it if hydrogen was a viable thing for light passenger vehicles, but you'd pretty much have to break the laws of physics and material science to make them that way. And in some countries, they will be the more viable option. In New Zealand, I personally think BEVs it suits the distances, it suits the terrain, it suits everything in comparison to hydrogen. But that's me. Everyone's got an
Well,
opinion.
they said that about EVs 10 years ago. That was the same thing saying about EVs as well. That, what's the point? It's never going to work here. 100k range tops. Going to have chargers everywhere. It'll never work. It'll never work. And we said that 10 years ago, right? Well, here we are now. What is it? World EV. Why do we need a World EV Day today? By the way, is there any particular reason we have a World EV Day?
But there's a difference there, Graham. In that electric vehicles, I mean, theoretically, they could build a battery one day based on science that's the size of this headphone packet that holds 100 kilowatts hours. It's electricity itself doesn't really take up any space. Hydrogen is matter, so there's only so much they can compress into a space before it becomes something. Now, sure, they can improve the technology and how fast they can compress it, and how safely they can store it, and so on and so forth. But there's physical limits as to what you can do. That's I guess my point. And they will progress forward, but it's how far they can actually progress forward that's the question.
You sound like my high school chemistry teacher telling me I'll never amount to anything.
But hear me out. I think hydrogen for trucks is brilliant, and I think we should be building as many. We should start building at least a basic infrastructure of hydrogen fuel stations on the main trunk routes. New Zealand can be covered relatively easily. We've already got Hyundai hydrogen trucks here, which look fantastic, and are out there and starting field trials now. But there's orders in for Hyzon. I think hydrogen makes so much sense in New Zealand for heavy transport. Bring it on, I say. And I think Twitter is actually really on the right track in regards to fuel cells for stationary power and other vehicles. You know, they've put fuel cells in these chase boats. Could we see hydrogen ferries? It makes a lot of sense in a hydrogen ferry. Could we see construction sites replace noisy, dirty diesel generators with hydrogen fuel cells? All sorts of stuff like that. I looked at a system in Australia a while back where factories over there will run electric forklifts that basically charge off a hydrogen fuel cell, which where they have a swappable hydrogen fuel cell in them, which charges through. They have solar on the roof, and it goes down to an electrolyzer that basically recharges these cells, which then just swap in and out of the fuel or out of the forklifts. Makes so much sense. There's so many options. I think Twitter's definitely on the right track with their efforts around being able to sell fuel cells here. I think they will become hot property in the future, or at least in my uneducated opinion. Now to something uneducated that Graham will have an opinion on. RAM confirms 523 kilowatt 1500 TRX monster for New Zealand. Following a lengthy period of speculation, the Tico Group and Ram Trucks New Zealand have confirmed that the 6.2 litre V8 Ram 1500 TRX will join the brand's local lineup. Their TRX will be priced from $249,990, making it New Zealand's most expensive pickup. Its Hemi V8 makes 523 kilowatts and 882 newton meters, and is capable of hitting 100 kilometers an hour in 4.5 seconds. Now, this is an interesting thing when it comes to the clean car plan, because that's going to pay the maximum $5,000 100, and I don't think anyone's going to care.
You had me at kilowatts, Richard.
I kind of feel like that should be horsepower. Can someone quickly run the horsepower conversion on that on their?
From memory,
Type
it's
it
a
into Google,
nice
Matthew.
round number. It's like an 800 or something like that. I'll give it a quick go. You guys keep talking.
That's
So
north of
Graham,
800.
when this one passes through the sorry,
701 horsepower.
701.
I'm guessing it's 700, but yeah.
Get my deposit back. Sorry, not interested anymore.
Did you need
There's not
1,000?
anybody with just 700 horsepower these days. I mean, you barely cut it in the KFC queue on Lincoln Road on a Friday night with 700 horsepower.
Look, I think this is an interesting truck, not from the fact that it's crazy. It's nuts. And I'm very excited that hopefully we'll get to drive it at some point. But it's interesting to show the health of the segment of those big trucks in New Zealand at the moment. We've got, GMSV is selling the Silverado in reasonable numbers. The Ram, I think they're selling what they can get. Ford is taking the F-150 into Australia, and potentially we'll see it here. They have not confirmed it for New Zealand yet. Toyota, the Tundra is going into Australia, and potentially it could come here as well.
Yeah.
People love their big trucks, and I guess when you're talking about, the Ranger Raptors launched this week, and that's $90,000, and then you chuck $5,000 on for the tax and a few accessories on, it's $100,000 truck potentially for a lot of people. People are just willing to spend money on pickup trucks.
Well, here's the thing: we're a nation of we're petrol heads, but Kiwis. We like to tow stuff. We like to tow a lot of big stuff. We tow a lot of big stuff various distances. We move a lot of stuff. We're also a nation of a lot of smaller businesses or self-employed or contractors or others, and whatever we do. And that gives us the license, if you like, to have cool toys every now and then. If you think about the average builder or workshop or anybody involved in any sort of facet of the trades sector, having a truck is both the ability because it's their money, their company, they can do what they like, and a degree of practicality as well. If you had a big boat or a big trailer where you tow big stuff like Rangers and Hiluxes things, they're all very well, but there's a limit to what they can tow, and this stuff is successful for a variety of reasons, but a lot of it also, bless them, is practicality. It's just practicality. I'm sorry it makes them not so illegitimate U-toners, but it's practicality.
Yep. Accelerating to get to Bunnings in 4.5 seconds to 100 is the exact practicality that the average Kiwi tradie needs. So going to more practical... I don't live in town. You're the one that lives in town. Anyway.
Well, I'm out in the wild west, so it's just kind of,
Yeah, sort of. Not really. Moving on to another commercial, just to finish the day, just to balance out all that... and all those emissions, is that fully electric Mitsubishi Triton and Toyota Hiaces could be coming to market. Following speculation that is developing a plug-in hybrid version of the Triton, a key Mitsubishi engineer has confirmed that a fully electric version of the popular pickup is being considered. Mitsubishi Chief Vehicle Engineer Kentaro Honda, that's an amusing name for someone who works at Mitsubishi, said that the brand is looking at electrifying the Triton, noting that the brand is currently weighing up making the model a petrol plug-in hybrid or fully electric. In the same week, reports out of Japan have indicated that Toyota could debut a fully electric version of its Hiace van by 2025, although these remain rumours. Now, let's run through a couple of these things. I personally think that Mitsubishi should get a PHEV version of the Triton out first, and I would have thought it wouldn't be that difficult considering that they have that drivetrain ready there. I'm sure it would be too hard to engineer into the Triton, and that would at least get them over a whole pile of laws around the place and probably become a bit of a default seller out there. They kind of need to hurry too, because I think with the LDV electric coming later this year, that's going to steal a march on a lot of fleet sales, but particularly with the GWN Cannon coming early next year in hybrid form, that too will satisfy, I think, a lot of the corporates that have been looking for some electrification. And I believe we've got a Hilux hybrid coming eventually too, and a few other things. Toyota's suggesting a electric Hilux-like vehicle coming in the future. It's an interesting one. Now, the Toyota one is going to be interesting as well, because it won't be the Hiace we see in New Zealand, I suspect. It'll probably be a next-generation Japanese Hiace. I don't know if you've
that would make sense.
Seen any forward stuff in the Japanese magazines on that, Graham. And then the third option to that is there is actually an electric Toyota van that I believe Toyota New Zealand have considered before, and that's the ProAce, which is a version of Stellantis' electric van in Europe. So that's on sale in Europe now. So, yeah, I mean, any thoughts as to what the makeup of this van, this Hiace could be, Matthew? Have they suggested anything? Are there any hints out there on what you've been reading?
So the only things I've heard from Toyota New Zealand is that they want something. What that something is going to be, I suspect we're going to be seeing something that's Japanese flavored. The ProAce you talk about, that's effectively a sort of reskinned, re-engineered Peugeot product. And yeah, that's been on sale in Europe for about a year. I don't know the sales or marketing. They have 3 different models that they have down there that there's no real whim or anything about them being expanded or being sent out to other markets. The thing that I think
that van is very highly rated. It's actually got a decent amount of range in it. I think it's a 70-odd kilowatt-hour battery, as opposed to most of the European vans, which are very low range. I think the Sprinter has like a 45 kilowatt battery or something like that, whereas their Stellantis lineup, they've gone for a bigger battery. My opinion is, I think if Toyota could get their hands on the ProAce, even if it's a UK spec, they should try, and I think unless it was hideously expensive, they'd move some units. But yeah. So you think it'll be a Japanese van? Do you think it'll be the current, a smaller one, bigger one?
Well, it's funny. Toyota in Japan still sells the old sort of 2005, 2000 spec Hiace. I read an article this week, and I haven't sort of seen words to the contrary. They don't get the Hiace that we get in Japan. So
It's too big.
Yeah, so I suspect that what we'll have is they will finally update that old van and give it all of this new tech. I suspect that's what's coming. Bringing it back to the Mitsubishi, the other thing I think is interesting is that we talk about the Triton and the potential plug and play of just chucking the Outlander's sort of hardware into it, but it potentially could also see a bit of Nissan influence. Nissan obviously has lots of EV material. They've done a lot of plug-in cars in the past and currently, and those two brands, the next gen Mitsubishi Triton, the next gen Navara, are going to be cousin cars, so they'll share the same architecture underneath. So we could even see some form of plug-in Navara down the line too.
Yeah, I think one of the justifications for Nissan buying Mitsubishi was they were actually after their plug-in hybrid technology, because I don't believe Nissan has its own plug-in hybrid platform. And hence we've seen the new Outlander, even though it's based on the X-Trail, it uses the old Mitsubishi engine and old Mitsubishi drivetrain. So yeah, no doubt Nissan is very keen to get that plug-in platform into a few things. So we could see two utes there that come with that option. So yeah, could be interesting. In regards to a full electrification, well, there is precedent there in that the next Triton will be on that Navara platform. There is an electrified version of that Navara platform. It's done by Dongfeng, which are a major Chinese automotive vehicle builder. So who knows whether that could come into play. Dongfeng aren't your backcountry cheap ute kind of operators. They are a fairly substantial operation that builds some fairly serious products. So potentially it wouldn't be stupid for Nissan and Mitsubishi to look to there for some of their kind of ready done electrification stuff. And that could be why Mitsubishi's chief engineer is being quite, we're looking at both kind of thing, because it may not be that hard of a thing for them to redevelop that technology to put into the ute. So I'm sure you're still not convinced about electric utes running around Louis Stalkland though, Graham.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen any around West Auckland yet. But don't forget, this is the Wild West out here. We have a whole different mindset from Wellington when it comes to such things. I've yet to see a T60 EV ute running around like not a dealership one. I've yet to see one of those on the road. But
because there's still only one of them, and you're the only one that's driven it. Well, you've
really?
driven it.
Okay, well there we are then. I thought they had some on the ground now. I tell you what, I have seen a few of is the BYD Atto. I mean, I know this is sort of an EV sector, but I've seen a surprising number of BYD Attos running around. All of the same blue color, all different vehicles. It's like, what was it? You got every color you wanted as long as it was electric blue. But I have seen quite a few of those running around. So there's obviously that first penetration by BYD has worked.
Good looking car, Graham. Good looking car.
Yeah, I think the colour was the thing that struck me the first, actually. I think a really striking colour and probably maybe a little bit less chrome or plastic chrome could be a thing, just quietly, just saying. But
do you mean that row of that bit of plastic chrome on the tailgate with the words on it?
It's quite... Yeah, it's quite out there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hey, look, a little automotive tidbit that I'll let you go to tell you guys about. The car, when you get them delivered, comes with the keys and then a card, an NFC card. You can tap it on the wing mirror and you can start the car and drive away. Super handy.
Right.
I had that in my wallet, and my lovely wife the other day, probably more my fault than anything else, we swapped cars after an event. And she drove home, and the keys to the BYD were in the car that drove away. But luckily, in my wallet, I had the card, and I was able just to tap it on the wing mirror and drive away. Beautiful.
Let's see, how far did you get?
All the way home. Yeah.
Hey,
Jamie Rose, thanks for watching, seeing you commenting there. we don't really have much of an update at the moment, but we're hearing some things around the place, and we will come back to you guys, to everyone soon, with some more detail. The only update we have had is that it's looking like the clean car standard may impact motorcycles as well, which is kind of interesting. I guess relevant, but kind of interesting. But I kind of feel like they needed to worry about getting it right for everything before perhaps moving on to adding stuff into it. So who knows?
Yeah, sure. Why not make a really complicated thing that's not currently workable even more complicated? What a great idea.
Anyway, look, that will cover us off for today. Thank you for joining us.
I've got one more little news piece for you, Richard, just very quickly.
Oh, we'll go for it, Graham.
For the petrol heads here, and I've got to demonstrate this using I've got a Hot Wheels car here. So, have you heard the news about the new Dodge Challenger? Have pulled a name back to the brink. The Dodge Challenger Swinger is one of the parting packages for the new Challenger package. And if you're a petrol head, you know the Swinger name came back from actually was a Dodge Dart Swinger, I think, back from the 60s, which was kind of a quasi-muscle package in a small compact car. And they've revived the Swinger name. What they say is the swan song for the all-muscle, all-beef Challenger. It looks to me like they're going to throw pretty much all the toys in the basket all at once at the outgoing Challenger. So at least it means there's a bit of a chance for people like me to experience the glorious, glorious nature of petrol being consumed at a rapid rate to be converted into noise for another year or so yet.
With a name like that, it sounds like they're going to throw the keys in the bowl. But anyway,
Part of the appeal. I'll just grow my song there a little bit longer.
On that bombshell, we're going to end the show. Thank you so much, Matthew Hansen and Graham McDonald.